Welcome to Stop the Fight, episode 6. And today we're talking all things boxing. We're talking Frampton Herring, and we're talking Pacquiao Crawford. Let's go.
Don't brag about taking my side piece. Don't brag about taking my side piece, though.
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
And he's strong, man. Good boy. Just.
All right, Carl Frampton, Jamel Herring, Super Feather. This is going to be a good fight. This is going to be a fight with a lot of punches thrown. This is going to be a fight with a lot of action. Carl Frampton, he loves to exchange. If you've seen his Leo Santa Cruz fights, he's had 2 of them. They were action-packed. He won the first one, lost the second one. Now, I think there should have been a third one, and I don't think Santa Cruz gave him that rematch. I think Santa Cruz said, no, I don't want it. But, unfortunately that never occurred. But Carl Frampton wound up going and beating Nonito Donaire 2 fights later. That was a hell of a win. I think that was probably his capstone win, if not maybe the first Santa Cruz fight. But I really think that Donaire win, Donaire is an excellent fighter. Anyone beating Donaire is already a very good fighter. So Carl Frampton is a very good fighter. He then unfortunately wound up losing to Josh Warrington. Now, I did not think he was going to lose that fight. I am personally not sold on Josh Warrington. And he wound up actually getting knocked out against Mauricio Lara in his previous fight. Josh Warrington, the problem with fighters like Josh Warrington is that they're in that Paulie Malignaggi range where even if you're very good, eventually the fighters realize they can just take all your punches and come forward at you throwing. You have to be a master boxer. And as soon as you slow down a little bit, you could be walked down, you could be stopped. You saw with Malignaggi. Now, Carl Frampton, of course, doesn't have this problem. But he doesn't have enough pop. And that's where I think he kind of suffers a little bit. And that's why the Josh Warrington fight, I guess, turned out the way that it did, is that he just wasn't able to wasn't able to bring enough to Josh Warrington to stop him. And lost the UD. Yeah, I was a little bit disappointed as I really do like Carl Frampton a lot. I think he's a very good fighter. Now, he's fighting Jamel Herring, who himself is a good fighter, but also why I say this fight's going to be probably action-packed and a lot of punches thrown is that neither of these guys have much knockout power. Jamel Herring has 22 wins, 10 by knockout. That's around 40% or so. And he's also a pretty decent fighter. Nothing really stands out about in regards to Jamel Herring. He's kind of pretty good everywhere except the power. And this is why he's got losses to Denis Shafikov and Ladarius Miller. This was about 3 and 4 years ago. He doesn't really have too many notable wins. He did beat Lamont Roach, who was undefeated at the time, and has a win over Masayuki Ito. But he doesn't have the career-defining win, which I think were he to beat Carl Frampton will get him that win, and with that maybe get a real money fight at Super Feather. Maybe get Burcheld because he's going to want to come back after his devastating knockout loss against Valdez, and they're probably going to want to put him in someone who's not a puncher. So anyone who wins this fight, I think, would be a good kind of a good comeback fight for Burcheld. But again, these guys are going to want the title, and Oscar Valdez, I don't know. I mean, he looked very good. He looked very good. Another fight would be the Shakur Stevenson fight. I'm sure Stevenson is looking for a bigger name on his scalp. Shakur Stevenson is probably one of the best fighters we have, young up-and-coming fighters. But we'll see. Again, the guys got to get through each other. Again, this is one of those fights. If you're betting, I think both guys are minus 110, minus 120. Here, I'll take a look at the DraftKings odds. What you have is Jamel Herring at minus 121 and Carl Frampton at minus 110. Again, this is one of those fights that's difficult to pick. How much does Carl Frampton have left? How much does Jamel Herring have in total? Those are 2 real questions because Carl Frampton, those 2 Santa Cruz fights, they were not easy. The Josh Warrington fight these are all decision fights that he goes through. They put on a lot of wear and tear going 12 rounds, and he's 34 at Super Feather, and You age a little bit quicker in those lightweights. I keep saying that, and I'll say it every single podcast because sometimes you hear with boxing fans, they believe that age doesn't exist. Guys, age is a very real factor. That's where the quote comes from. Father Time's the only undefeated fighter we got. And this is the truth. So Frampton being 34 and Herring being 35, these aren't young spring chickens out here. Now, who do I like in this fight? I like Carl Frampton. I think he has a little bit more than Jamal Herring has in total. And I think he should be able to keep the pressure on Jamal Herring the entire time to win a clear, unanimous decision here. If we see even a semblance of the Frampton from the Donito Donaire fight, this should be a pretty clear decision win for Carl Frampton. I don't think he's getting the stoppage. I just don't think he has enough pop. And this is, again, especially at these higher weight classes, he just doesn't have enough to stop these guys. Now, Jamal Herring has been stopped before. But I don't think this is going to happen. He was stopped 5 years ago against Denis Shafikov. But I don't think Carl Frampton's getting the stop. He just doesn't have the power to do so. I think he can pressure him. Maybe, like I said, if there is a chance for a stoppage, maybe a late round TKO where he just builds up a big enough lead that Herring doesn't come out. But I don't think it's happening. I just don't see that outcome. But again, I like Carl Frampton. I really do. I think he should have enough to beat him, and I think he's got one more fight in him after this. One more money fight. One more chance at the big boy glory. Now, unfortunately, everything around, like, we're living in a pretty good time for these lighter guys. All the champs from 130 to 135 to even 140 are really strong guys. Oscar Valdez is the guy over here. Outside of Shakur Stevenson, would you really take anyone to beat Oscar Valdez right now? Probably not. And even Shakur Stevenson, I don't think any of the other guys in the top 5 can beat him. Not Seven Farmer, unfortunately, not Frampton, and not Jamal Herring. Frampton doesn't have much where else to go. So I think he's really got this fight and then really one more cash out kind of, well, obviously maybe 2 more, a goodbye fight in Britain, but one more big fight I think he has in him after he beats Herring. And that'll be it. He's had he's had a good career. That Donito Donaire win, like I said earlier, was his capstone. No fighter who's not at least very, very good or championship level is beating Donito Donaire. And of course, the first Leo Santa Cruz fight, handing Leo Santa Cruz his first defeat at a weight class, unlike Gervonta Davis. This was Leo Santa Cruz's weight class. This is where he was strong. By the time he went up to 135, that was a different Leo Santa Cruz. Carl Frampton wound up beating a prime Leo Santa Cruz and still a very, very good Donito Donaire. And I think, this is a good body of work. Not to mention, of course, his all his other fights against Kiko Martinez and Scott Quigg. Like I said, Frampton is a very good fighter. He's deserving of all the praise, and I hope he has this in him. But let's talk a little bit about Jamal Herring. Jamal Herring was a Marine. He served for 9 years and then turned pro. So he's a little bit of a late starter in the game. He throws nice shots. He throws a lot of body work. If you watch his fight against Lamont Roach, he throws a lot of body work. He's a pretty good fighter. He's got some speed, but he's lacking that power. Again, similar to Frampton. He doesn't quite have that win, that signature win. I guess maybe Lamont Roach. He was stopped by Denis Shafikov, but his corner threw in the towel at the end of that fight. I don't quite like that. I didn't like that stoppage. So if you were going to throw it in, I think you could have thrown it in the middle rounds. Even in round 2, Herring was knocked down. And you kind of saw that if you were worried about your fighter taking that much damage, I think you could have stopped it a little bit earlier. He took a good amount of damage in that Shafikov fight. The way he holds his hands up, he lets Shafikov through really wide shots. And they would always land behind the guard. Now, you see this with fighters sometimes. Danny Green knocked out Roy Jones in Australia that way. The fight the shot just came so looping and so wide that hit Roy Jones behind the guard, almost on the ears. And you saw many of those shots land on Herring. He just didn't get out the way. He sat there with his guard up, and he took a lot of damage that fight. It seemed like his equilibrium was off since the second round at many points in that fight. So he's susceptible to being stationary. You know, he has good. He's like, his offense is pretty good, but his defense, he starts to become a little bit of a pylon. He puts up that high guard and seems to eat a little bit too much on the gloves. It's the force still travels through, guys, and this is to a lot of you. I don't know, to any of you who have or haven't fought, you can eat shots on the gloves for sure, especially in sparring. You know, sometimes you're sparring with 16-ounce, 18-ounce, 20-ounce gloves. Well, I never sparred 20-ounce gloves, but you know, you're sparring with 16-ounce gloves. And headgear. You can eat those shots a little bit, but against a good fighter, you feel them. You feel them, as you know, and these guys are fighting with 8-ounce gloves. You know, those shots they're ringing. The force is coming through, especially with pro fighters. So Herring, he's kind of sitting there, but I think he won't have that same problem with Frampton, because Frampton doesn't have much power, especially not at 130, as he would normally. So Herring's bet here, I think, is to throw is to outwork Frampton. If Herring is going to win, he's going to outwork Frampton. Frampton, you know, is probably you got to hope that he slowed down a little bit and you can outwork him. That's really his only chance. Like I said, he's not catching the stoppage, and he's probably not going to get stopped himself. That being said, let's talk about the actual betting odds. You know, again, this is what I'm doing, guys. This is not what you guys do. This is not advice, not financial advice. Please be grown-ups about this. Now, like I said, I don't think anyone's getting the stoppage here. So if you're looking at over/under, they're giving you at -400 at over 10.5 and a +275 at under 10.5. Now, I think your only bet here, and I don't like the outright pick, is the -400 at over 10.5. Now, of course, it seems like a big risk, but I can't imagine these guys catching a stoppage. I can't imagine it. You can maybe try and hedge something with if you really like one of these guys. If you think Frampton really has it in him, you can take him at -110. You're pretty much getting even money for him. But I have this little thing. I don't like to take British fighters. I don't like to bet on British fighters. I've gotten burned too many times, and I think what capped it off for me was the Joshua Ruiz fight one. You know, and that's why I was so confident the first time I took Povetkin to win by knockout. I was like, it's a British fighter. The only one it's a British fighter. They just have to kind of lose. And so I've been always very weary. Even though I personally think Carl Frampton will probably win, I won't bet on him outright. But you guys, you guys are your own kingmakers, your own money makers. You guys decide what you want to do. But if I'm looking for a play, I'm looking for the over 10.5 for a little bit of scrap change here. Let's talk boxing rumors. Let's talk about a potential fight that they're talking about. Crawford versus Pacquiao. Can you believe this? Can you believe Manny Pacquiao at 40-something years old is going to try and fight Terrence Crawford? Is this legit? I mean, this is a big money fight. If I'm Crawford, I love this. But Pacquiao? Can you imagine if he were to win? Can you imagine if Manny Pacquiao in 2021 beats Terrence Crawford? Wow. I mean, this is almost like a win-win for Pacquiao. What's the downside here? I mean, it's a fight, obviously, physical downsides, but legacy-wise, he loses, he's old. I fought the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world, and I lost because I'm old. You look competitive, and you say, at 40-something years old, not only did I fight the undefeated pound-for-pound king, but I was competitive. That's how good I am. That's Manny Pacquiao. You win, and if he beats Terrence Crawford, Manny Pacquiao will have possibly one of the best resumes of all time. He will go down as maybe a top 3 fighter of all time. He'll be up there in the conversation for potentially the greatest fighter of all time. Not the best pound-for-pound fighter, but the greatest. You know, sometimes that's the difference. I think Roy Jones is the best pound-for-pound fighter of all time. But due to the way his career worked out and who he fought and the tail end and the longevity, he's not the greatest fighter of all time. Similar to heavyweight. Muhammad Ali is the greatest heavyweight of all time. Is he the best heavyweight of all time? I don't think he beats a prime Lennox Lewis. He's just too big. Muhammad Ali's a little too slow. I don't think it's there. I don't think I don't think he beats a prime Mike Tyson either. But that doesn't mean he's not greater than them. And if Pacquiao were to beat Terrence Crawford, he will certainly be the greater fighter than Mayweather. And I said many times I believe that Mayweather always beats Pacquiao, but we're not talking about who the best pound-for-pound fighter is, but who is the greatest. Like I said, wins are intransitive. If Pacquiao's win over Thurman, it does not mean that Mayweather has that win over Thurman. That's Pacquiao's win. And if Pacquiao somehow were to beat Terrence Crawford, Mayweather doesn't get that win. That's not Mayweather's win. He doesn't beat Terrence Crawford by virtue of Pacquiao beating him. Because sometimes you hear this a lot of times. Oh, well, Mayweather beat Pacquiao, who then went and beat Thurman, or then went and beat Crawford. Therefore, Mayweather beats Thurman and Crawford. No, those fights never happened. That's something you can contemplate, but that's not what happened. That's not the way it works. Otherwise, we all know Taylor wound up beating Hopkins, and Hopkins wound up beating Pavlik. So certainly Taylor's would kill Pavlik. Yeah, that's not the way things work in boxing, ladies and gentlemen. So there are no transitive wins, as I call them. But this is quite, I don't think this is necessarily a lot of people are saying, oh, Pacquiao's going to lose, he's too old. I don't know about that. Terrence Crawford, one of Terrence Crawford's positives, it's like a double-edged sword, and is a negative for him, is his aggressiveness. He likes to get into a dogfight. He likes to, he doesn't like getting hit, and he gets angry and wants to hit back. And that's a good trait to have, of course, at least for us viewers. It's a fun trait when a fighter has that. When a fighter has that trait, it's fun viewing. But against Pacquiao, Pacquiao's still very fast at 41-42. Very fast. And Terrence Crawford is not a speed demon. This isn't a guy who's going to blind you with his speed. Terrence Crawford is one of those that does everything at almost at A level, and that's why he is a pound-for-pound fighter. Very high boxing IQ, but he can be dragged into a fight. His defense is sometimes a little bit suspect. We saw him get wobbled by Gamboa. We saw him get hurt by the Lithuanian guy Kuliakakis, or what was his name? So against Pacquiao, early on, it's going to be really interesting. That speed, not very many people can deal with that southpaw speed, and Pacquiao throws straight shots. Those are straight shots. They land quickly. We're all taking a physics class or a math class. A straight line is the shortest distance between point A and point B, and Pacquiao throws those shots really, really straight. And that's why Pacquiao is already possibly one of the 10 greatest fighters of all time. So, but this fight is also a really good fight for Terrence Crawford. If he wins here, we've chatted up Pacquiao a little bit, much. Let's talk about Terrence Crawford here in this case. He has, this is a high risk, high reward, because if he loses this fight, they'll say he never had it. He was never a pound-for-pound guy, really. He just fought nobody. Maybe he was a guy at 140, but at 147, he was nothing. They'll be wrong, but that's what they'll say. You already know. We've heard this said a million times. A fighter loses, he was always a bum. That boxing fans, they have a big problem with this kind of stuff. No, but it is a high risk, high reward, as he sat around so long, partly his fault, partly not, of course, not really fighting anybody at 147. We're waiting for the Spence fight, but this Spence fight is not happening. Everyone wants that meal ticket that is Manny Pacquiao at around the 147 range. And if he were to win, he will solidify his position as pound-for-pound king. He'll probably push back Canelo. And unless Canelo really comes out there and just blasts out Billy Joe, but I don't think that'll do enough to, obviously you'll still be a horse race, but I think He'd have to literally like just completely obliterate Billy Joe, outbox him for 5 rounds, and then knock him out in the 6th or something. But Terrence Crawford, it also depends how he wins. Like if he wins a close decision against Pacquiao, I don't know if that'll do it for him. I think he's got to try and stop him. He's got to stop Pacquiao. Pacquiao's been obviously stopped most famously by Marquez in their 4th fight. But if were he to stop Pacquiao, that'll be that giant exclamation point. Because you can't really say Pacquiao is old. Yeah, he's in his 40s. And by all historic metrics, he should be done. But he just beat Thurman. And Thurman was undefeated. Yes, he was coming off surgery and an injury, but he was undefeated. So beating Pacquiao, even at this age, will be looked at as a very good win. It's not the same as when Marquez beat him in the 4th fight, but this will be a very good win, and this will solidify Crawford as a pound-for-pound guy. And then, again, this will go back to him requesting at least a 50-50 or 60-40 or whatever. Like, everyone wants more against the Spence fight. The Spence is the real fight that we want to see Crawford at. Spence is that well-cooked, that's the steak. That's the prime steak right there. That's the Spence fight. That's what we all want to see. That's the one that'll crown the pound-for-pound king without question. Crawford beats Spence, no question. No question. He's an all-time great. If Crawford beats Pacquiao, then fights Spence and beats Spence, he's an all-time great. He will have been undisputed at 140, and he will have been pretty much the guy at 147. So that I think that'll do it. That'll solidify his Hall of Fame credentials, and that'll make him the pound-for-pound king post-Mayweather era. At least at that point, he'll probably be kind of undisputed, unless Canelo goes on to do something extraordinarily amazing, which he is doing. But I think Crawford will be looked upon as the pound-for-pound guy if his next 2 wins are Pacquiao and then Spence. Let's talk about Tyson Fury. Have you guys seen the photo? Go look up the latest photo of Tyson Fury, the skinny photo of Tyson Fury. Go to Google, type in Tyson Fury skinny, and set the results to the last week. And look at the first photos that come out. He looks thin. He looks very thin. That fight with Joshua, that's going to be interesting. Now, obviously, your first reaction is to go, Joshua's screwed. That's it. Tyson Fury is going to... This is the best Tyson Fury we've ever seen. But I would be a little bit more hesitant than that. While that was my first inclination, you have to remember when bigger guys lose a lot of weight, it takes a toll on the body. It takes a toll, and he's looking very thin. He also looks a little bit older. It could be because he's bald. It could be the beard. But he's 32, 33, and he looks like he's 42, 43 in this picture. And, he's never been like a young-looking guy. Obviously, the substance abuse plays a role, but the weight loss here, I'm sure it's good for his overall health. But when it comes to punch resistance, when it comes to the ability to fight for 12 rounds, this may not be the thing that we want to see from Tyson, a dramatic weight loss like this, because he's looking very thin here. He looks like he's 230 or so. Now, again, angles, we'd have to see him again. There's only one picture. Like I said, Andy Ruiz was able to put up fat girl angles on his pictures, confusing us all. We all thought he was thin. Then he comes in for Joshua 2, and he's a fat slob. So, again, this is just one picture, but you guys have to know that there are dangers to losing a lot of weight very quickly. Your body may not be used to it. And if they're considering a Joshua Fury fight sometime in the summer, I don't know if his body will be used to the weight. You guys remember Roy Jones lost a lot of weight when he came back down to light heavyweight after his heavyweight run. He wasn't the same fighter ever again. Something was different in Tarver 1. Yeah, he won that fight, but that was not the same Roy Jones. We all saw that. Something changes to your body. And he's in his 30s now. This isn't a 20-year-old kid. Tyson Fury's like 33 years old. Losing this much weight, it it may not be the blessing that you guys think it is for Tyson. I'd have to see another picture of him, but if he is truly this thin, I'd be worried. I would be more confident, actually, in taking Joshua to win the fight than had he been the fuller Tyson Fury we're used to. You can be a little chubby and in shape, like Tyson Fury was against Deontay Wilder in the second fight. You don't need to have washboard abs to be a fighter. That's a myth. Not every body functions the same way. A little bit of fat helps actually with endurance. Your body's able to tap into the fat stores for energy later on in a fight. Remember, a fight is explosive, but it is also an endurance contest. It's not just 3 rounds, throw everything you have, and that's it. It's 12 rounds, 36 minutes of action. And that's a marathon. So you need to be able to have your body functioning at the top level and not be in a weakened state due to weight loss. So, like I said, I want to see more pictures of Tyson Fury before I comment more on this, but it was just a little bit shocking to see him so thin. In other news, they are planning another exhibition fight on ESPN Deportes with Eric Morales and Marco Antonio Barrera for a 4th fight. Now, I think earlier this year, we saw Julio Cesar Chavez have an exhibition fight. And I like these things. If the guys are in good health and they're going to fight with headgear on and they're kind of doing it for the fans, I don't have a problem with this. It's great to see legends. These boxers know how to do one thing really in their life. That's how to box. And it's nice if they can get a little bit more cash here and there in their 40s or maybe even their early 50s. And especially if no one gets hurt, there's some headgear on. I would love to see Eric Morales and Marco Antonio Barrera. Eric Morales is my favorite of the three Mexicans. Eric Morales, Antonio Barrera, and Juan Manuel Marquez. Morales was always my favorite. His victory over Pacquiao was quite something, especially that 12th round when he goes southpaw. Like, that's, that's the stuff that legends are made of. And Eric Morales is a Hall of Famer and the legend, certainly in my eyes, certainly in the eyes of most people. So I'd love to see him in a 4th fight with Marco Antonio Barrera. I think it's all good stuff and in good fun. So I hope these guys get paid and have a good time. I'll be watching for sure. And now, we have a Thursday fight. Another Thursday, another set of fights. We have undefeated Alan Solis, 12 wins, 7 by knockout, 1 draw. We're supposed to fight the Brazilian, Antonio Soares, who has 1 win, but that apparently is not happening, and he's fighting Jonathan Aguilar, who is a journeyman. He's 19-8 with 15 knockouts and 4 losses by knockouts. But, like I said, Thursday night fights, these are the kind of fights I want to see. These young kind of like up-and-coming prospects, or maybe not prospects, just kind of journeymen. But I love these kind of fights. I'm absolutely going to try and catch it. I'm absolutely going to try and watch it. I haven't seen any of these guys fight. I'm not even going to make pretend I have. So, it's always nice to see someone new. And like I said, Thursdays, I love watching fighting on Thursdays. I love watching fighting all the time. But Thursdays, Fridays, it's just a special kind of treat. So I'm always happy for a Thursday night fight. Now we got some news from the Billy Joe Saunders Canelo fight. Already more than 40,000 tickets have been sold. There's going to be a big fight. Again, it proves that Canelo is a giant star, even in the United States. We have a large Hispanic populace, but even non-Hispanics know who Canelo is. Canelo is a really big star. And this fight with Billy Joe Saunders against a real undefeated fighter, this is selling, because the fans, we love big fights. We'll pay for them. We'll watch them. We'll clamor for them. Hell, we'll do the marketing for you just by talking about them. Promoters need to give us the fights that we need. One of the reasons MMA is growing so much is that Dana White is able to kind of herd all the best fighters under the UFC banner in MMA and have the best fights nonstop. There's nothing but huge fights in UFC all the time. 1 fighting 2, 3 fighting 4 all the time. In boxing, we rarely get it. So as you see, we're getting, we're boxing is actually going through a really, really good stretch of fights here. If we do get Fury Joshua, Canelo Saunders, Crawford Pacquiao, all like back to back to back to back to back like this, there's going to be a huge string of fights. You throw in a GGG fight in there. You get the Charlos out there. This is the big show. There's a big money fight, guys. So again, I'm happy to see good matchmaking is rewarded with profits. Everyone's happy. Everybody wins. So again, that's gonna do it for us. Go enjoy this weekend's fights. Watch the fight tonight on the Thursday. We'll talk about it when we come back on Monday. It's over.
I'ma go home and break my wife's hip.
Don't brag about taking my side piece. Don't brag about taking my side piece, though.
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
And she's strong, man. Good boy. Just